Devastating news this week on the NXT front. NXT champion Tomasso Ciampa was forced to undergo neck surgery, an anterior cervical fusion on Thursday, and is off the Takeover New York show where he was expected to defend his championship against Johnny Gargano to cap off their 2-year-long rivalry. This is a surgery that is typically to relieve a bulging or a herniated disc. They go through the person's throat to do so, to remove the disc, and a fusion of the bones is performed. Recovery time could run anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks before you can resume, quote, normal activities. Pro wrestling is not a normal activity. He is not coming back in 4 to 6 weeks. I can guarantee you that. He could be looking at 6 months or more on the shelf, depending on how fast of a healer he is and barring any complications, which sometimes happens. I mean, look at Hideo Itami. You know, in his shoulder, he had complications. It ended up keeping him out for almost a year and a half. I certainly hope the same thing doesn't happen to Ciampa. They already have surgery photos up of him going into surgery and during the surgery on WWE.com. There was initially some hope that he'd be able to work through the injury long enough just to get to Takeover, but the injury progressed to the point that they had no choice but to rush him into surgery and just take care of it now. My understanding is that his injury predates his debut on the main roster. So I think it is very short-sighted to say that anybody is to blame for what happened. I can't tell you how many tweets I saw from random people online about blaming Vince McMahon. It's all his fault. Triple H should have stood his ground. This is all his fault what happened here. He was already hurt going into the main roster call-up. Now, yes, he was wrestling more often probably than he was down in NXT. But guess what? He's a wrestler. That's what wrestlers do. They wrestle. I personally would not have called any of these guys up before WrestleMania. I would have waited until after WrestleMania, either the night after or the shakeup that's happening in mid-April. Toss them in there, and then some guys land on Raw, some guys land on SmackDown. Instead, they've been showing up on both shows. Why even have a brand split? So I'm not a huge fan of the way that they've gone about doing this. But I think to infer that it is somehow the reason that this is all happening is because, well, they got called up, I don't necessarily buy into that. But I also don't understand why there was such a need to rush them onto television. You couldn't wait a month? You couldn't wait, 45 days? You had to call them up now? If they end up in prominent matches on the WrestleMania card, then it makes sense. Right now, they don't have any match at WrestleMania. Now, they probably will end up on there. At the very least, I would hope they're on the TakeOver card the night, 2 nights before. But the whole thing is just very bizarre to me. But this is not a case where there's blame to go around. Shit happens. This guy has had a bad neck for a long time. It caught up with him at the absolute worst time. It is terrible timing for the payoff to a feud and a storyline that has been building now for almost 2 years, if not 2 years. That's a long time. And it's terrible timing for Ciampa after being called up. He missed all of those months when he was hurt before with the ACL tear. 7, 8, 9 months, whatever it was, he was out on the shelf. He still wears a brace on the knee. To get the biggest run of his career, to become the NXT champion, he gets called up to the main roster, which I'm sure was just a precursor to a full-time call-up after WrestleMania, and he gets hurt. And it's all down the toilet. I feel terrible for him. It sucks. The more important thing is that he heals up and he's able to come back and wrestle again. Neck injuries are nothing to mess around with. Neck injuries can be career-threatening, which is why they didn't want to play any games and they couldn't wait any longer and they had to rush him into surgery. Look at Jason Jordan. Jason Jordan showed a lot of promise. He was really starting to find his groove once they turned him heel on Raw. Great wrestler. He's got the amateur background. He was a 3-sport athlete. They talked about that all the time when he was in NXT. He's sitting in now on production meetings. He may never wrestle again. Now, the next set of television tapings for NXT is this Wednesday. So, a few more days, we'll know then what they decide to do. Are they going to vacate the title? They don't necessarily have to. If they think there's a chance that Ciampa could be back sooner, than later. But without knowing for sure how long he is going to be out for, I wouldn't hold the title hostage. I don't think that's a good idea. If they do vacate it, are they going to do a tournament? Are they going to have some kind of a match at the tapings to determine who the two men will be to fight at TakeOver? Like one big match or battle royal or something? I mean, there's a few different ways they could go with this. I like the idea of a tournament in this situation. I would suggest doing an 8-man tournament at the tapings. And tape matches to air the week of the 20th and the 27th. And then on that go-home show, which is, I think, the 3rd maybe, or I think it's April 3rd, whatever that last NXT television show is before TakeOver that week, that's where you have the contract signing between the two men who make it all the way to the finals. They have a contract signing, and you set up the final match of the tournament for the TakeOver show in Brooklyn. That's what I would do. And this is how I've set up the bracket in this situation. This is how I would do. These are the people I would include, and this is how I would arrange the bracket to be. First round match. Johnny Gargano against Matt Riddle. I think this would be a good way. First of all, I think that would be a great match. And it's not a match I think that we've ever had before, even outside of WWE. I think Riddle and Gargano could be a hell of a match. And I think it would be a good way to shock people with Gargano, the man who everybody had pegged to win at TakeOver. This was going to be the culmination of a long story, and Johnny Wrestling was finally going to win the big one and become Johnny Champion. And so you've got people who I'm sure just figure, well, he was going to get the title anyway, so surely Johnny at least has to be in the final match, right? If not win the entire thing. Well, I would bounce him out of the first round. That's one way to shock people. And I would bounce him out of the first round, not just for the shock factor, but because I don't have him pegged as the winner. But why not shock people and show them that, you know what, you don't necessarily know who's going to move on in this tournament. And it would be a huge win for Matt Riddle. So I would do that match and have Riddle go over. I would have Aleister Black against the Velvetine Dream. The rematch that we have been waiting for. Rematch I've been waiting for. Since their War Games match at the War Games show, not a War Games match, but the match they had at the War Games TakeOver a couple of years ago, they had a fantastic match, one of the best matches in NXT history. Now they're both baby faces. Dream has a title of his own. Black is as good as a main roster guy now. I mean, he's all but permanently on the main roster, I think. Dream should get his win back here. It gives us a chance to see another match between us. And Dream gets his win back. He advances to the semifinals. We have Ricochet against Adam Cole. These two have history together. Ricochet, like Black, is basically on the main roster now. I think that it would be a great match. Adam Cole, though, would get the win. Black and Ricochet can lose anyway because now that the Street Profits are gone from the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic, and I'm going to talk about that in a second here, what an awesome show that was on Wednesday. Now that the Street Profits, who were my first pick, have been bounced, Aleister Black and Ricochet were my number 2 pick. They were my backup pick. I think they probably end up winning the whole thing. So they can win the whole thing, and they can challenge the War Raiders for the tag team titles at TakeOver, and that'll be their match. They don't have to win and advance here in this tournament. So I think Adam Cole against Ricochet. Adam Cole goes over. And the final first-round match, Keith Lee against Dominik Dijakovic. A rematch from NXT television 2 weeks ago. I had pitched, if you remember, doing one more TV match between the two of them with another non-finish because they had a double count out the first time. Maybe this time it's a double disqualification. Or they pin each other at the same time. Some kind of non-finish that builds to them doing a third and decisive match at TakeOver in Brooklyn. I would open the show with it. I think they'd tear the house down at the Barclays Center. I really liked that first match they had. I thought it was a lot of fun. Add to that, on television this past week, there was a little pull-apart between them at the Performance Center. They've already announced a rematch on NXT television between these two guys, not for this week's show coming up, but next week, which would be when the tournament would start. So there you go. The match has already been announced. Just make it a first-round match in the tournament. Problem solved. Voila. There you go. You know, they've already done half the work by announcing the match. And it's the perfect opportunity with it being a tournament match, if I want a non-finish to build to a third match, Have them go to a time limit draw. Have them pull a Luger and Tatanka from the King of the Ring in 93. Neither man advances. That leads to a third match between them at TakeOver. Meanwhile, the person who benefits, the person who gets a bye straight into the finals, is Adam Cole. And in the lone semifinal match of the tournament, Matt Riddle beats the Velveteen Dream. We just saw Matt Riddle interrupt the Velveteen Dream on TV this past week. It looked like they were setting up an eventual match between the two of them. Instead, do the match here. Have it as a semifinal match in the tournament. Riddle gets the win, and he advances to the finals to face Adam Cole. Takeover for the vacant championship is Adam Cole one-on-one against Matt Riddle. And I said this on Twitter, with injury comes opportunity. And I posted a photo of Matt Riddle. This is their chance to make a new star. This is their opportunity to crown Matt Riddle as the new NXT champion. I know Adam Cole has a lot of fans and supporters out there. It's not fair. Adam Cole should get his time. He should be the champion. Well, Johnny Gargano is the one getting screwed here too. It doesn't look like he's ever going to be the NXT champion if his main roster call-up becomes permanent. But that's the way the world works sometimes. Things happen, guys get hurt. Here's a real chance for them to make a new star and have this guy be the premier babyface to lead the brand. Because Johnny Gargano was going to go to the main roster. Adam Cole and the Undisputed Era, one of the reasons I don't have Cole winning here is because I think it's time to move them up to the main roster. I know I'm a glutton for punishment by saying that, looking at some of the other recent call-ups. But I try to convince myself what I've heard Chris Jericho and so many other people say over the years, which is that the cream eventually rises to the top. And if you have the talent and you have the ability, you will eventually get what you have coming to you. You will eventually get opportunities. If they call all four of those guys up at the same time after WrestleMania, or if they include them in the shakeup, you move the Undisputed Era together. Don't split them up. You keep them as a faction together. You put them on Raw. You put them on SmackDown. They've been in NXT for long enough. I hear people, saying, well, what do you think about putting all of the titles on them? Have Adam Cole win the NXT title. You can have Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish win back the tag team titles. And then Roddy can get the North American title at some point from the Velveteen Dream. I don't know why people have such a hard-on for wanting to redo the Horsemen and the Evolution thing all over again, where they all have titles. We've seen the Undisputed Era hold those tag team titles already before. Is everybody really clamoring to just put the belts back on them again? Why not move them up to the main roster and have them win titles there? Why do it in NXT? You put all the titles on them, that's another year. At least. For them down in NXT. They deserve a chance to shine on the main roster. Look, all these changes they're making to the creative team and the people they're adding, and Jeff Jarrett and Bruce Pritchard, I hope that after WrestleMania, and when they do the shakeup, we get some real change. Maybe things will really start to change even just a little bit for the better. And they really will shake things up. And if so, they're going to need some new faces. How long do you want Adam Cole and the Undisputed Era to stay down there in NXT? Do you want them to just stay down there indefinitely? You don't want them ever to be on the main roster and have a chance to become something more? Because I think they can be. So no, I don't think Adam Cole should win here. Not everybody is sold yet on Matt Riddle, I get that, but you will be. This guy is money. We haven't even seen the best of him in the ring yet. He's had no real standout matches because he hasn't had the chance yet. But this man should be the champion right now. And this is their chance to blow it all up and run with him as their top guy. Turn a negative into a positive. Like I said, with injury comes opportunity. Make the most of it. Make a new star.